Hello, welcome back to See What Sticks, podcast in tandem with Hollywood Casting and Film. I'm Russell.
I'm Ariana.
And I am Max.
And I'm Nick.
And we also have Joshua on the podcast as well. Nick, would you like to introduce yourself for this show for people who may have not listened to the last episode?
Yeah, certainly, and thank you for having me. My name is Nick Bain. I'm a partner in Behind the Billboards, which is a development company that works mainly in television in Los Angeles. I have multiple other hats as well. Mother of Dragons, Breaker of Chains. All of those, but that's the one I tend to go by at the moment.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming by. We'll get into it a little bit, but you're one of the reasons you're here is because you're working with Hollywood Casting and Film on an upcoming short that we'll get into that is very topical right now, and that I think all of us on this podcast are really excited to work with and work on. So I will open the floor to Ariana, Max, and Joshua to ask a few questions, and I have a few of my own.
Cool.
I guess I can go first. I have one of my questions is more of a big general type, just about your life experience. I saw on your website that you have a lot of experience producing films in other countries. And I was wondering if you could just go into it a little bit, because I'm very interested in it. And I'm sure a lot of people don't know much about it, about the different experiences and the different processes of producing films in other countries and other cultures.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right that that has been the pathway that has brought me to this point. Certainly, I found that there were opportunities that existed to go and do that, and it is certainly a different philosophy. I mean, I only more recently began to, in the latter half of my career, began to connect to to Hollywood projects and to the studio system and all of that. My other experiences are very different. I just did a feature film this year, $10 million feature that is a Bollywood London gangster crossover movie that was shot part in India and part in London. And the fundamentals are the same. It's, get a great script, assemble the talent, find the finance, and deliver the film. Those things don't change, but every territory you go into has different cultural expectations of, and the movie cultures are really different. I mean, most people don't know that Hollywood is actually, it's only the third biggest movie industry in the world in terms of volume. The first two are Nigeria and India, and those are industries I've worked in. And they have a very different, they have a very different approach to storytelling. And a big part of my role, and this is a position I've occupied a few times, has been the guy that you call if you have a project that has a cultural root in a certain place, but you also want to speak to a wider audience, to an international audience. So I have the privilege of getting to go in, work closely with filmmakers where they're from, learning enough about the culture or engaging with the culture to the point that I can also bring the specific expertise that might allow for those stories to be told by them, because Hollywood is very good at going in and, for years and years, this is how it was. If there was a story about India, it would be because a Hollywood movie touched on there. If there was a story about Africa, it would be out of Africa. It would be from the colonial perspective, if you like. So, yeah, really for the last 10 years, I've been working with people to allow for those stories to be told from that, from that real perspective, I guess, from that indigenous perspective, and that it allows for the people from those countries to be in charge of how their country is defined culturally. And we all know that movies are a massively powerful tool for doing that. So, yeah, that I think is it. But it always comes down to the people. That's the other thing I would say. And I've been really fortunate to work with, slightly crazy, enormously ambitious, very very talented folks from every corner of the world. And the projects that we produced have been a testament to that. And every on every project I learn a lot as well. You think you go in knowing something, and you very quickly discover that you're going to have to learn a heck of a lot more, and that's in every circumstance.
For sure. I guess my next question, and then we'll get on Ariana, is about your upcoming film. And this is a looser question that doesn't need to have a concrete answer. When you were writing this film, and now in the, I guess, partnership with Hollywood Casting and Film in creating it, what is it that you see? What is the image that you see in your head when you see the finished picture?
Ooh, the image I see in my head. I don't know. I mean, I think screenplays are a collection of those images, and I guess that as a writer, I've learned to trust the people that I work with. So, my wife would probably say that my God complex is well established, and if anything, a little bit too established. I actually do really value the collaborative aspect of filmmaking is one of the most exciting elements. So I have a certain idea in my mind. I can feel a sense of the pacing. I can feel a sense of of how the basis of how things will be realized from the point of view of the actors' performances and that kind of thing. But actually, I also trust the director that I'm going to work with, and I trust those actors, to bring their interpretation. I've set the pieces on the board, but I'm excited to see how other people move them around.
Yeah, as someone who does direct and produce and do cinematography, both on my own and with Hollywood Casting and Film, I think that's really interesting and really kind of a breath of fresh air to hear, to kind of have this incredible thing that you've created and having this trust that people who weren't there for that initial creation phase to be able to take this on and give it a different spin, or give it a spin that you have your fingerprints on as well. I think that's really important, because just in my own history, sometimes writers aren't as open to doing that, and they don't want you touching their baby or making their baby any different. But I think that sometimes is the case, and sometimes is a good thing. But for other projects, especially like yours, which we'll get into, that's very topical, it's interesting because everyone on the project can put in their own idea and put in something that they may have experienced or seen someone else experience, especially because we'll get into it. All of us on this call are white, and it'll come at it with a different angle, especially because a lot of members of our filmmaking team here aren't white. Mm-hmm. And to see that happen between someone who looks like me and then someone who doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it would be remiss of me, speaking on behalf of the Writers Union, I should probably say that, all writers are inherently reasonable people. Yeah. And, I could imagine a circumstance where a writer could be difficult or protective. I think there is a natural born instinct when you create a piece to go, oh my God, these guys are going to come, do things that I haven't thought of, or but you have to. I think you very quickly have to get away from that as a fear. Mm-hmm. You gotta imbue the creatives that you work with the trust, first off, to go ahead and do what they're going to do, and then secondly with a script that gives them the tools to do that. And yeah, as you say, this is going to be all the more of a challenge, given that we are going to some places here. And we are going to some places as 4 white people, and a picture of a letter of poor Joshua's name. I can't see his face, but we're going there, and we're gonna say some stuff, and people are gonna have opinions about what we say. So it's really important that trust exists, and I certainly have it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that manifests in the production.
And I think this may touch on one of Ariana's points, but I think it is cool that we're working on a project that, people will have an opinion on. And as someone who is a filmmaker, I like that. I like when someone has an opinion of something I'm doing, because everyone is entitled to their opinion, and you don't have to like what we create. But all I ask is watch it, and if you don't like it, tell me why you didn't like it. And I think that's the most important thing when creating anything, is people will say stuff. But as long as you can back up what you're saying and say, I didn't like it because of this, or I felt like you didn't represent this thing the right way, that's fine. But I think a lot, and I'm sure you can say the same, is people say they don't like something even though they've never seen it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also for anybody that doesn't like this piece, then it was entirely Hollywood Casting and Film's fault. I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't there. You give guys a script, you don't know what they're going to do. It's all right. I'm already fully lining up to blame you guys if anything goes horribly wrong and we all have to go into hiding. So
I am so glad that I was thinking the same thing. That
cool. I figured it.
It'd be perfect. It's the best relationship we could ever have creatively. But yeah, Ariana, I know that kind of touched on one of your points.
Nick, I just first wanted to say congratulations to you and your wife on expecting your daughter.
Oh, thank you. I was barely involved, but sure, thanks.
Yeah.
Since you were one of the people that went over all over the world to do all these films, do you think that because of your experiences of visiting these places and experiencing their culture has made you a better writer, in the sense that you gain a better understanding of what you're writing because you're more knowledgeable on other things that some people might not have any idea about?
Yeah, I would hope so. I would certainly hope so. I mean, I have an approach to writing that is very much coming out of journalism. I was inspired by the Gonzo style, the Hunter Thompson style. Not so much the narcotic aspects of that, but certainly the idea that if you want to have any semblance of authority to write about something, then you got to go where it is. You got to go and experience that thing for real. And even if that includes doing some slightly stupid things, and I've done a bunch of stupid and dangerous stuff in the course of my career, going in search of great movies, great feature films to write. And while I don't necessarily have to recommend that, going in and experiencing the culture and getting that really that really true and first-hand understanding, and second to that, not just going in as a tourist, going in there as for the long term, for the real deal, as with colleagues that you develop friendships with, that so that understanding is not just a lick of paint. It's not an inch deep. It goes a lot deeper than that, and yeah, that cannot help but from the point of view of how you go into the world, and how you listen to the stories that people are telling you, and how you interpret them and understand them and shape them so that they can be made. Yeah, for sure. I can only recommend going out and doing that. I know a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do that, and I've been lucky to have that. To have people be willing to pay me, albeit at times very small amounts of money, to go to slightly crazy places and do slightly crazy things. But that I can only recommend that as an option. The more you live your story, the more authority you'll have, and that is especially true in Hollywood today, because voice is everything. And as as you mentioned, we're a bunch of white people having a conversation at the minute, but we need to defining your voice, setting your stall out, creating that sense of who you are and why your set of words on a page has any difference in value to anyone else's. It both helps in terms of how good you get at what you do, but it also helps with having other people understand who you are and what you have to say, and why it's important that you get hired when somebody else maybe doesn't. So all of those things have a bearing.
And in a completely non-selfish question, what is one thing that you would be looking for, a few things you'd be looking for a director of this film, and someone who is going to take another kind of creative fingerprint both with the actors, with yourself as a writer, and on the filmmaking side?
From a non-selfish standpoint, so that means I can't say that, somebody that just follows the script to the letter of the law and just does exactly what I tell them at all times. Not that. And in all seriousness, I wouldn't look to that. And I've worked with some really great directors over the course of my career, in film and in TV, and then back into the theater initially. I think that so I wouldn't bring a whole bunch of stipulations down, because I don't see there's much purpose to that. I think I've said most of what I've said. Was it Morpheus says in The Matrix? It's like, I can only show you the door, you must walk through it, Neo. Like, I'm not going to be walking through the door, somebody else is.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would love for it to be somebody that has a real sense of what is being said, and a real sense of what's at stake, both in the small silly story that I've written, but also in the much larger and more profound and really important and dynamic story that's being told in the US today. In the United States, this is the story. It's the story.
Yeah. I definitely, I think it's really interesting, because with that line from The Matrix where it is, I can only show you the door. You really have to kind of take it upon yourself to make this something of what you want to see it as well. And I think as someone who does direct and does do cinematography, when you're looking at a script, it isn't just a blueprint. It's more of a concept design for something, because a lot of times in like film school or working with other directors or like producers, they're like, oh, the script is just a blueprint for a movie. I don't think so. It's more of like a concept car. They're like, this is what this should look like in my own brain. And then you kind of give it to the factory, you give it to like the engineers, and they're like, I like that, but this needs to look a little more like this and like this. And I think that's something, especially with a project like this, that one is close to your heart, with the interaction that you had with your wife and what's happening in our world, and kind of like you were saying on our previous show, for those of you who listened, is the world that your daughter's going to grow up in. Mm-hmm. And kind of what the filmmakers behind this need it to look like, not just say, oh, the script says this and this, but what this needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very short script. It can't possibly say everything that needs to be said. And I wouldn't want to say it, because, it's much of it is actually not for me to say. Mm-hmm. But I do have, I to be literal, I have literal skin in this game. How this progresses will impact the quality of life that my family has in the United States of America. And I like that. That has to, it has to be important, and therefore, I would hope that it's as important to the person that realizes it. And I loved your your engineering metaphor, mm-hmm. because people that know me well probably they would not allow me to engineer anything, like anything that anything that had to kind of go, or had an engine, or not fail in order to convey you to a place of safety from A to B. I would not be the guy who would get to build that. So I'm very appreciative of the engineers with their, and the film engineers with their, variety of different skills.
Yeah, definitely. I think with working with the other members of this podcast, and as well as the team at Hollywood Casting Film, it's interesting when you use that engineering metaphor, because when you get on set, when you do table reads, when you do everything else with the director and everyone on that meeting, you start to get some of those kind of creative differences in there, where, especially if it's coming from an early stage, someone's like, well, I see this character like this, but the script says it's like this. I think there is a sense of, well, if the script says it's like this, clearly the writer is coming at it from this angle. Let's not go way out in left field, but let's kind of meet somewhere where, the script isn't about you, person A. The script is about this person he's writing. And of course, we can put ourselves into that, but we can't become that, because that's not what we are. It's like designing an airplane, and someone's like, well, I want it to be a submarine. Well, no, it's an airplane. So we can't make it a submarine. And I think that is something that we've experienced, and we're starting to experience more on more complex projects, where I think everyone selfishly does want to put themselves in the project. if they're a filmmaker. They want to put their own fingerprint on it very tangibly. And I think with something like this, it's tricky because you want to say the right thing and you want to be on the right side of history, but you also want to respect the person creating the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially for one of the positions that, and looking at it politically, you know, there's the question of what it is to be an ally in this moment, and as you know, white people, liberal people, you know, whatever, you know, anybody that actually wants to, you know, wants to be able to make a significant change, you know, and wants to be able to have that influence on the world in a positive way. You know, we have to figure out what our pathway to doing that is, and it's not always easy. It's, you know, there's not always that sense of familiarity. I'm very lucky in that, you know, I have a lot of people in my life, whether it's through my business or, you know, obviously through my relationship. I have a lot of people that can tell me when I'm saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I also know that there are an awful lot of people that want to help but aren't quite sure how. And because of the perspective that I live, I can, you know, I'm not going to be telling an African American person to do anything because they live that experience. That's not my place to do that. But if this piece can actually help people that aren't African American understand a little bit what's going on, and help them figure out the ways that they too can actually, you know, be supportive without becoming a detriment through misunderstanding, then I'd be really happy, because that, you know, this very small, very silly piece could actually achieve something if that's the case.
Yeah, I completely, that's really important, where it's, you want to do it, but you're like, what ground do I tread, and where is too much? Where's not enough? I think that's another thing where helping is important, but like, where is the line for me? And it's not a thin line, it's a really thick line where it's like, okay, here's this, and where's this other area where I hit my stride? And I think sometimes it's ask the question, don't just assume something. Like, if you're not sure, like, just ask. And I know that comes from like a filmmaking background, of course, like, ask the writer. But in like a social setting, if you're not sure about something, politely asking, I think most people will tell you, don't do that, or they'll tell you, you're cool to do that. Most people, I don't think, will be rude about it or won't be in your face about it, especially if you're coming at it from like a genuine perspective of educating yourself.
Yeah, you have to hope so, for sure.
Yeah. Max and Ariana and Josh, I know you're on the call as well. Do you all have any questions about this and about working with Nick and kind of the project coming up, as well as his career?
It's not so much a question as I just wanted to emphasize, I love how you were talking before about how you're not only willing, but you want to encourage people to put their own creative touch on the project, and kind of tying also into the experiences that people have. You know, you can't speak for everything that people go through. So if you think of a film as going down a path when you make it, every step along the way, it experiences new people. So it's directors, writers, producers, actors, all the set crew. Everyone has their own creative touch and has their own experience to bring to the table. And I really love that you encourage that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to, you know, it's, we all know from, I'm sure from our interactions in the business, that there's more than enough ego around, and you don't have to go looking especially hard to find it. So everybody's smiling and nodding at this. Is yes, there, you know, one or two egos in the film business, guys. You know, sorry to break that to you, but yeah, I think if you're open to other people's greatness, you will get where you're going far faster than if you're not, and if you're too concerned with your own.
Yeah, I think that's a really good kind of lesson for everyone, both kind of new filmmakers, like really developed filmmakers, and people who want to get into filmmaking. I think that's important. Is there are people with egos, just don't be one of them, or try not to be one of them, because Hollywood, for better or worse, has a reputation. And when you said earlier that Hollywood is only the third biggest film um, generator of movies, I think
by volume, yes.
I didn't even know it was three. I thought it was two behind Bollywood. I wasn't sure. I was like third. I was like, Korea? Like that's where my head went, because I'm like, I know K-pop is big, but and I know in Africa the filmmaking scene it's blowing up. There's a lot of those TIA, like This Is Africa kind of campaigns to say like, hey, I understand the world may look at us a certain way, but as like a continent, we're big and we have a lot to say. And I think that's interesting, especially on this podcast, which is for white people talking about it, to be like, yeah, no, Hollywood, we're not at the top. On the podium, we're getting bronze. And I think that's important. And it gives, like, it should humble us to say that there's these other stories that have more money behind them, more people behind them, and sometimes even more of a story than what we have. It's just we're so into the Hollywood scene that that's all we can see. Oh,
Hollywood has kind of the legacy, you know.
Nick, you're muted.
Oh, I do apologize. I knew that was going to happen. I was just agreeing with what you were saying anyway.
Oh yeah, for sure. Max, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, Hollywood has the legacy behind it. If when people think about Hollywood, you know, it's been around since the 50s and before then, and that's kind of like the age old storyteller that influenced all these other places who have now grown bigger.
Yeah, like it's America's soft power, especially in cinema, that like the world is like, oh, movies, Superman, like that kind of thing, that like you can like go somewhere and wear like the shirt I'm wearing that says Space Jam, or you can wear something that has like Michael Jordan's name on it, and most people would know what that is. And I think if you did the reverse thing, like a really famous Bollywood actor like Shah Rukh Khan, like that, he's super famous. He's like, whoa, famous. But most people in the US, I think even a lot of people in Los Angeles, if you said that name, they'd be like, yeah, I've heard that. I don't know what that is. And I don't even think they'd know that's a person. You're like, oh yeah, Shah Rukh Khan. And people are like, 100%. Like, yeah. And I think there's something to be said for that. And I think as filmmakers in the United States, we should embrace that and start watching more films and look towards those other places for better stories, because everyone says Hollywood's out of ideas. Well, the world isn't. Maybe like the Hollywood studio system is, but there's a lot of stuff we need to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's in to a significant degree that's kind of what our company exists to do, because Behind the Billboard specializes in we're myself and my partner Yule, who used to write on Heroes for NBC and is done all kinds of things, as a very established TV writer who I teamed up with on arriving here, and has taught me a lot about Hollywood and about the wider industry. And we were able to combine our experience, having that, you know, that really deep understanding and connectivity to Hollywood and to TV, and then combining that with all the crazy experience that I was telling you about from, you know, bouncing around the world. And both of us are kind of global citizens in that way. We both work, you know, internationally. And, but what our company does is it specifically finds ways to develop international content, usually sourced from another country. And it allows us to bring the qualitative bar that Hollywood expects, as is currently understood in the qualitative bars that, for example, international streaming services like Netflix or Amazon would expect. So, you know, what we do is we work with local productions, and we help them, you know, make those stories bigger, because you know, as you guys were saying, you know, Hollywood has the heritage. And it has created, you know, the language of international success from the point of view of the big blockbusters and the financial clout that they have. But you know, in today's world, international content is proving hugely powerful and successful. You know, if you know, looking at shows like Dark on Netflix, or, you know, the huge variety of international language content that, you know, it used to be the case that people didn't think Americans could read subtitles. as a British person, I certainly thought that for many years. Then I came here and met you guys and realized that it was a terrible lie. And now, you have these huge international shows that are being made. So, Behind the Billboards is, we're wanting to be the bridge that can allow that, that exciting, new, different cultural experience and excitement that comes from other places to merge with that, the experience and the very, very high bar of scripted, that the United States and Hollywood has for scripted content. If we can bring those two things together, we can do something really amazing, and that's what we're working towards doing now.
Yeah, definitely. I think the closing point on that, because we only have a few minutes left, is with Hollywood doing that last year or 2 years ago at the Academy Awards, they changed the categories from best foreign film to best international film, and Hollywood was like, whoa, we just did something huge. No, like, you changed one name of one award. That doesn't mean you did anything. Like, that was some guy in office changing a title card. Honestly, like, we need to do more than that to really say that Hollywood is actually inclusive, especially at the top. And they'll, like, Hollywood will say, yeah, well, we casted all Asian people in Mulan, or casted all like this and that movie. I'm like, that's cool. Like, that, seriously, like, I'm glad we're doing that 2020, but that's nothing. Like, we need to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touch on a really great point there, because the other thing, and just in closing because the thing I would say to both, to my peers, and also to the the generation of filmmakers that are coming up behind me, behind us, the people that are coming out of schools now into this crazy world. One, there is a pathway to success in doing this, because there are an awful lot of accommodations that can be made for people with a good skill set, in territories that aren't theirs, if they're willing to listen and learn and be a bit humble about that. And the second thing I would say, and this is really important from the point of view of the life of a filmmaker, the life of an independent freelancer, which can be unpredictable. And like we've all done, normally the jobs that have to go alongside. The first years of my career were, I was doing all kinds of other stuff. I worked in a prison for 4 years with inmates, in rehabilitation. I served in the UK version of the National Guard. Like, I worked for the police for 2 years in resource deployment. All of these other, life experiences, were, they're integral to helping, like, with my understanding of the world. And the last thing I would say is that going and having that, if you're a young person now and you're wanting to tell stories that have a global reach, go have fun. Go eat the amazing food. There are foodstuffs that I miss from the US. Being in the US, there's experience the culture, drink the wine, eat the food, meet the people, share with the ideas, collaborate. And if you can do that, then it will certainly further your career as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you. I'm sorry to cut this conversation short to what it is, but I hope everyone really enjoyed this. Thank you, Ariana. Thank you, Max. And most of all, thank you, Nick, for coming on. I hope everyone enjoyed this. And the podcast will be up later today if you're listening the day of. But thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on the next show. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.